Thank you so much, Julie, for joining me in a moment with the mayor. This is Julie Urban, everyone, our housing specialist here at the City of Richfield.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming today to talk a little bit more about what's going on in Richfield currently around affordable housing and all the different things going on. So as our residents can see, you can drive anywhere in Richfield and see that there's new development, new housing going up, and it's really exciting for our city to be able to just increase the amount of housing that we have, but also housing options at a range of affordability. So can you talk a little bit more about the tools that we have to help community members that are lower income have access to our housing across the city?
Sure. So we have a lot of tools that we've worked on for many years, but one of the tools with new apartments that we use is something called our inclusionary housing policy. And it's sort of a complicated term, but basically it's trying to look at these new buildings and encourage them to not just include higher rent apartments, but also to try to include a mix so that the building can be accessed by folks with a variety of incomes. And of course, that a challenge because it's oftentimes lower rents just don't cover the cost of building that brand new building. And so we have to look at different resources that are available, and some of our own are available, and outside resources. And anyway, we use that inclusionary housing policy as a tool to say to developers that we'd really like you to provide a mix of rents for folks.
Thank you. And so you talked about our city's inclusionary housing policy as a way to really make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. So, for example, some of the things that we'd love to see more of in Richfield is units that are made for more, bigger family sizes. There's a lot of maybe efficiencies, one bedrooms in the new developments, also making sure that accessible housing, and again, a range of affordability for all spectrums of income in our city. So how could we use that tool very specifically to help us meet some of those needs?
Yep. So that's, we know the need is out there for larger bedrooms, for example, and we've heard that for many years. It's just, again, a matter of resources. We've talked about that. But, one of our concerns with our current policy is that we've ended up with 57 apartments with lower, more moderate rents, but they've all been either efficiencies or one bedrooms. And so we're trying to figure out how can we help serve our families with children, because we do have lots of families who rent in our community. And so we're talking about how do we work with developers to get a mix of sizes. And of course, it costs more to provide a 2-bedroom, or a 3-bedroom is really what we'd love to see. But there is a at sort of what resources we have as a community, and then saying to a developer, if we're going to give you some of our city resources, then we want you to include units with more modest rents and include some units that are larger. So it may mean that we need to provide more resources. It may mean that we may need to be patient and have them seek outside resources. Or maybe what it means is if they're going to provide some 3-bedroom units, then we require fewer because we understand that those cost more. So it's a matter of balancing two. What are our priorities? Is that what's most important? Or we'd also like to have units that are even more affordable for, say, someone who's earning just minimum wage. And again, there's a cost to that. So we have to think about, what kind of resources and how much we can require of a development before the development becomes unworkable. There's a certain point where developer's just not going to build the building, or they're not going to be able to get financing if it just doesn't make economic sense.
Absolutely. It's there's so many puzzle pieces to put together, and at the end of the day, in our community, we want to ensure that we do have that affordable housing that meets the range of big families, small families, people with all different situations. Another thing that I know that our city staff, that community members, and even our state representatives have been working on together is doing some advocacy at the state level to say we need more flexibility, we need more support and tools to be able to fill these gaps, because the existing tools that we have aren't flexible enough to really meet those needs that we have of larger units or deeper affordability. So that is something that I know our staff have been doing actively in partnership with our state representatives as well as community members. So that's another thing I just wanted to let folks know, that we are advocating for this flexibility at the state level. And to be honest, thinking about, how are we going to get out of COVID and what will that look like? What will our bounce back? What will coming through at the other end look like? And we need flexibility across all of our systems and in every area, not just housing, but we're really going to have to work with our state and federal partners to say, if we want to be resilient and stronger on the other end of COVID, this is what it's going to take, more flexibility in these type of tools, supports, and resources. So another thing that we're very interested in making sure we have more of in Richfield, because we're severely lacking, like most communities, but in Richfield we are as well, is around affordable and accessible housing. And a lot of our apartments in our homes were built in the 60s, before the Americans with Disability Act was passed. And so a lot of our housing is not accessible for folks with disabilities. So what are some ideas that we're currently exploring to bring more accessibility into our housing stock?
Yeah, so yep, that's a great one. Another one of our needs. And like you said, so we have a lot of apartment buildings, but they were built in the 60s, and a lot of them are what we call garden level apartments. So you walk in and you have stairs immediately. And so we can't even really reasonably fix them. So really, in order to get more accessible housing for folks with physical challenges, we do need to build new. And so one of the things we're considering, we've actually just informally talked to several developers in the past to just say, would you be willing to do an accessible unit? And we've started with one or two, but the way the rules work right now is every new development is required to have 2% of the units be what's called type A units. And those are units with wide doorways and turning radius in the bathroom, but they maybe don't go the extra step. They still have cupboards underneath the sinks, or they don't have grab bars, but they're almost ready to become accessible. So type A is something that we've been looking at, as well as fully accessible. And so we're kind of just in the stages right now of gathering our research. I've met with our Richfield disability advocacy partner, feedback from them about what their needs are, and been talking to some architects. I have another conversation with an architect tomorrow just to talk about, what does it mean if we were to require, say, 5% or 10% or a greater number of units that are more accessible. And I think that part of it too, we talked about, we don't operate in a bubble, right? We're part of the broader community, and that at some point, I think that the broader community needs to acknowledge that we're all going to have challenges physically at some point, and that, like universal design, where we design everything to be more friendly to folks who have physical challenges, is really where we'd like to be. But so at this point, though, we at our local level need to can try to use our inclusionary and housing policy to say, we would like to see you do even more, and really start making those steps towards making things just more accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. I love the point that you bring up around making sure that we understand that it's not just Richfield, but that it is we are a part of a region, we're a part of a broader community, and that these issues are not just in Richfield, but they are really issues that we're experiencing globally. And so how can we always make sure we have that lens, the regional lens, the statewide lens, and that we're working across different communities? Because whether it's accessibility and affordability of our housing, or what our housing situations will look like after COVID, that's another area that I'm so concerned about, is housing stability in the midst of COVID and after COVID. These are things that we have to tackle together, but also we can't wait until everybody gets on the same page to try to make changes in our own community. And so we're focusing on trying to do both. And then most importantly, a part of that process is ensuring that the people that are most impacted are at the core of those conversations. So what are ways that community members can influence, who live here in Richfield, work in Richfield, can influence the affordable housing work, our inclusionary housing, but everything we're doing here in our own city?
Yeah, and it's, as you know, been more of a challenge during this time because we want to do it safely. We were all set to have a meeting on this where community members were invited way back in March, and we couldn't do it safely, right? So what I've been trying to do is reach out to groups. I've met with a couple of groups and what we call listening sessions, right? And I realize that's not everyone, but it's sort of a sampling. It's at least some so that we can hear different voices and hear those folks that are most impacted. So I've done that. I have a couple of, or an information sheet that's available on our website. It is available in both English and Spanish and sort of talks about some of the different needs and issues. And it's specific to this policy, so it's a little bit technical. But then the other piece I'm doing is putting a survey out. It's a brief survey really to talk more about needs and priorities. And then you guys can take that information, staff can take that information and further hone this policy so that, we get to where we want to be. And I think it's important too to point out that, so we're talking about making changes to the policy. You and the HRA members, Housing and Redevelopment Authority members, will be talking on February 16th at a work session at 5:45, which community members can certainly listen in. We pass some changes. That doesn't mean that's the end. We constantly want to look at these things and respond to how things are changing in the community, in the world, and how our needs change. So it's not like if we approve something and people are like, wait a minute, that's not far enough. That's not what, we can always do more, and we're always open to listening. And I know that you and the other council members always encourage folks to reach out to you directly and provide you with feedback. So always encourage people to do that. And they can always send me an email or give me a call. jurban@richfieldmn.gov. Email is probably best right now. I'm not always in the office to answer the phone, but always welcome to send me an email and find out more information if you have questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie, for sharing kind of what we're doing right now around affordable housing, the changes we're seeing, some challenges we're experiencing, and how we're working together to overcome that. And I want to let our residents know, we are so lucky to have such a great community development department that has done so many innovative things that cities across the Twin Cities have really looked to the city of Richfield and our community development and affordable housing work as a model for change in their own city, whether it's supporting our community members that are kind of the lowest income, most in need, that have children in our school district through the Kids at Home program, whether it's our first time home buyers down payment assistance program, the energy efficiency programs we have, supporting a wealth of housing options for all different lifestyles and all different types of families and residents. Richfield and our community development department has always been leading. So we thank you for that long history that has really helped us be where we are today in the great city and the desirable city that we are today, but also for your continued work in partnering with the community to face these really kind of wicked challenges of affordable housing, accessibility, things that are really important here, but also across the whole country. And we're really working hard to figure out how we can make those changes in Richfield. And that's so much. And thanks to our staff and our community working together. So thank you, Julie, for your work.
Well, and we appreciate your support and the support of the other council members and our Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I think just understanding these challenges and the needs of the community and supporting us in trying new things and, and working to do better.